Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Safety for Cruisers. Today we are talking about VHF radio communications and we'll dabble a little bit into SSB. So VHF is a great technology. It stands for very high frequency. It just has to do with the range of frequency that it runs. You've got VHF, UHF, and then below that you've got the HF band for the SSB. So VHFs are going to run in the 150s range, 150-ish megahertz, and airband is going to be down a little bit lower. So airband is going to run in the 118s to 120s. Nav aids for aircraft are going to run in the 1 teens usually, and basically all of these work as a simple, it's a simplex system. There's no well, unless you're inshore in a country that has repeaters or shore stations, which some do, you are just going to be using a simplex system, which is you transmit on one frequency. Anybody that's on that frequency can hear you, and they can also step on you. So you can get a hot mic that will block out all kinds of transmissions if you're not careful. So you want to make sure that when you have your radio on that you're listening, and if you don't hear anything for a long time, make sure that you're not transmitting, you don't have a hot mic, you're not jamming up the frequencies. So I have on this boat a Standard Horizon GX 1700. It's a built-in radio with DSC communications, digital selective calling. What that means is that the radio has a GPS and it has the ability to call specific MMSIs. So anytime you buy a VHF radio that has this DSC feature, you're going to need to register an MMSI number with the controlling agency that you belong to. For us, it's the FCC in the States. So since this boat goes internationally, and I also chartered it, I was required to buy a ship station license, which is a process you have to go through. Normally, you can just get it through Boat US, any kind of safety organization like that, and it's free of charge. Essentially, it assigns you a number that is registered to you and your radio. So my MMSI number is put into my handheld radio and also into my my ship station radio. So what that means is that if I were to press the emergency button on the radio over here, or if I were to make a routine DSC call to another boat with the DSC radio, that number is assigned to me, and if it's a distress call, it's going to have all the information on the boat and on me and on my emergency contact. And the great thing about this is that it's not like an EPIRB that has to be interpreted and read by a dedicated agency. It goes out over an open frequency. So we'll insert a little sound clip here of what an emergency DSC alert will sound like. And then you'll actually get a message, we can try to put one on the screen, of what it'll look like. It'll say, MMSI, this boat in this location is declaring an emergency. Sometimes you can specify what kind of emergency, and any boat within range of that signal is going to receive that. So a normal 25 watt transmitter can, on a good day, get maybe 20 miles of VHF coverage. That's because essentially it's line of sight, so you get 20-ish miles of the horizon. I'd say in my experience that's pretty optimistic. You can usually get reliable signal. You can receive, maybe 10, 15, but you're not gonna necessarily be able to talk beyond 10 on a normal day, would just my experience has been. That is with a 25 watt transmitter, and you do have to be careful because if you scroll down on your channel list and say I'm on channel 22 right now, which is a popular channel in Mexico, if you scroll down to say channel 17, channel 17 is locked out in the US radio map as a low power channel, so you will only transmit with 1 watt of power, which is less than this will produce. So keep in mind that some channels, depending on the country registered, are going to be locked into a lower power mode. And so that when you key up on them, it's for a local communication. You're not transmitting and giving feedback on all over other different channels and locations. So we'll go into channels here in a minute, but just another example of radio that I have on board. This is the HX 890. This is the exact same thing as the Shore station. Its maximum power, though, is going to be significantly less, whereas you have 25 watts here. Depending on the handheld transmitter you have, it'll be 5 or 6 watts. You can trunk that down to 1 as well, but you're going to significantly decrease your range. So what we use this radio for is we clip this onto our Watchstander's PFD, and it has a little safety clip. You want to make sure you use that too. So if you were to go overboard, you could go ahead and press this button. That's going to light up the radio down here, and that's going to wake up the people down below. And since it's a closer range operation, you know, you'd hit that as soon as you were able to when you went over the side. You can then get found pretty easily. If you're trying to talk to somebody, you're trying to use this as, say, your primary in the cockpit. If you haven't gotten around to putting a RAM mic or a second station up there, you're going to have a lot of trouble. You're not going to be able to talk to people more than 2 or 3 miles away on a normal day in my experience. So great to have, but it truly is a backup. It truly is something that needs to take a back seat to your primary radio. Talking about some channels here. So the most important channel on the VHF is going to be VHF channel 16. You're going to hear, if you're in the States, at some point you're going to be listening, the Coast Guard is going to come up and scold somebody for chatting on 16. They're going to say, channel 16 is for international hailing and distress only. So what that means is that every single boat floating around, whether it's a lake, a river, an ocean, a cargo liner, a little dinghy, if you have a VHF radio, you are supposed to listen to channel 16, because that's the channel that everyone has decided is going to be the one that we go to. So if everyone's on that, that means that when we're doing a crossing and there's a freighter that we want to talk to, instead of having to choose a random channel, we're going to get on channel 16 and we're going to hail them that way. So channel 16 is super important. Different countries are going to have slightly different radio maps, but all of your big channels are going to be the same, so that, again, we can talk to each other all over the place. So in the States, we have 16 as a primary hailing. 13 is a very common commercial frequency for bridge-to-bridge communication. Most commercial ships will monitor 13 and 16. In the States, channel 22 is for the Coast Guard. That's a dedicated Coast Guard channel. They'll have you switch over to 22 Alpha if you want to talk to them. But in Mexico, 22 is kind of just the channel to be on. It's where everyone talks. So this goes into the next fun feature to talk about, is dual watch. If you, say you and your buddy, you guys are buddy boating up the coast somewhere, you want to be able to talk to each other. Say you'll pick a working channel. You pick channel 73. Okay, we're going to be on listening to 73. But you also want to be monitoring channel 16 in case something happens around you that you can respond to. So you're going to hit dual watch. Every radio is different, but you can dual watch 16 and whatever channel you're on. So very important, if you guys are off of channel 16, that you're dual watching. There are some times where you're going to just listen only to one channel, but the more time that you spend monitoring channel 16, the more everybody does that, the safer we are as a maritime community, because the more people are monitoring that one safety channel. Now we're going to talk a little bit, if you want more information on channels, there's channel maps for your location. You can look them up online, super easy. I can put a link down in the description for that. But we're going to move right along here into a very brief description of MMSI DSC calling, and then we're going to go into the different kinds of radio calls. So one of the great functions is that you can program, with all these new radios, the DSC, you can program groups in, you can program individuals, so you can make your own little cruising net. And what's fun is that if you say you call your buddy, you know his MMSI is 429334, whatever it is, you punch that in, you choose a channel, you say routine calling, you go in, you hit him, his radio is going to do a little buzz, and it's going to say, oh, so-and-so is calling you, and he's going to hit accept, and it'll take him automatically to a channel, and you guys will be on your own little kind of, you know, talk bubble. So that's really nice. You can program it for a group. Say you guys are, everyone's going up the shore together, you got a little flotilla, you're doing a rally together or a race. The race committee can punch up a group with all the MMSIs and can put out a call on that. So that's pretty nice. Now we're going to move into the different kinds of calls and a little bit of radio etiquette. So there are three types of common calls that you will hear. In order of priority, it's Mayday, Pon-Pon, and Securite. So a Mayday call is when you are immediately in danger or concerned about the safety of your own life or the life of somebody else on board. If you have a man overboard situation in a nice calm bay, it might not be worth a radio call at all. But if you're carrying full downwind sail in 30 knots and the seas are 25 feet and somebody goes overboard, that might be a Mayday call depending on your ability to rescue that person. So if you have a fire on board, if you're abandoning ship, that's what Mayday calls are for. Pon-Pons are something a little bit less urgent. So say I'm navigating out of Bahia Santiago here, and I wrap a line around my rudder, and it jams it up, and I can't use my rudder. And I'm very slowly drifting towards some rocks. Maybe I have time to get my anchor down, something like that. That could be a Pon-Pon. I'm not in immediate danger of sinking, but something's gone wrong and I don't like where I am. All of these calls are going to be followed up by whatever your request is. So it's going to be a request for assistance. It could be a request to stay clear of your vessel while you do something that you need to do. So Pon-Pon is less urgent than a Mayday, but it's still something that kind of has the hair on the back of your neck standing up that you're not happy about. The last one is going to be a Securite. So Securite pertains to navigation. Say we're pulling out of the bay here on our way to the next anchorage, and we see a shipping container that's just floating just below the surface. More common than you might think, sinks boats on a yearly basis at least. So at that point, say, okay, that's not good. Luckily, we avoided it. And we're going to put out a call for Securite, and it's going to sound, this will kind of move into how to make a call, it's going to sound something like this. It'll say, Securite, 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 this is sailing vessel Sierra Wind. We're in position 19 degrees 06.556 north by 104 degrees 23.760 west. We have found a submerged shipping container approximately 6 inches below the surface. All mariners are advised to keep a sharp lookout and avoid the area if possible. This is Sierra Wind, standing by channel 16. So that would be a Securite. Basically, if you're listening to channel 16 and you're in the area, you would hear that and you're like, oh, there's a shipping container over there. You plug the coordinates in. It's also nice when you give these, you say, we're half a mile southeast of Bahia de Santiago. You pick a landmark, you pick something big that you can identify, so people don't have to plug the coordinates in. And everyone hears that and they say, oh, there's a shipping container over there. Okay, I'm going to stay away, or I'm going to keep a really sharp lookout. So that's what a Securite is for. That kind of segues us into the next part, which is going to be our emergency communication format. So we have a little sheet here that we'll show you on screen, and it's basically just an emergency communication outline. So I have this because if you're not used to talking on the radio, I'm a pilot, captain, I work on ambulances and fire engines and things. Talking on the radio is a no-brainer for me, but I know a lot of people get choked up and it's really stressful for a lot of people. So for my crew, I made this sheet here. So all they have to do is read it, plug in the information into the area that is appropriate, and transmit that on the radio. When you transmit, you want to hold it down for a second before you start talking. You want to listen for a few seconds before to make sure you're not stepping on other traffic. And when you transmit, you want to hold it a couple inches away from your face, and you want to just talk in a normal tone, normal volume, and ideally you want to talk as slow as you can, because people are going to be writing this down if you're lucky and someone can hear you. So this would be an example of a Mayday broadcast that we could make. It says, Mayday, 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 this is sailing vessel Sierra Wind declaring an emergency. Our location is... You read off your coordinates. You always want to do that immediately after making your initial broadcast, because say your radio dies, say your batteries go underwater and you lose power. You want to get that location now, so if nothing else, people know there's a Mayday at this location. you want to follow that up with a descriptor of where you are. This could be, I am, a mile south of Bahia de Santiago. This could be, I am halfway between LA and Hawaii. It could be wherever you are. The further out to sea, obviously, the less, geographical landmarks are going to matter, but you want to be as exact as you can so people know where they're looking. So, Mayday, 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 this is sailing vessel Sierra Wind declaring emergency. Our location is X, Y, and Z. We are X many miles from the nearest landmark, and we are a white-hulled 12-meter sailing vessel. You want to give a descriptor of the boat you're on so, again, people know what they're looking for. We have a fire on board. We have a hole in our hull because we ran into that shipping container because we didn't hear the security before. You want to describe the next part of the report. That's kind of your initial info. The next part is taken straight from a firefighter mayday. It's called a CAN report, a conditions, actions, and need report. Conditions, what's your problem? I have a fire on board. Action, we have attempted to contain the fire. We are unable. We are preparing to get into our life raft. Needs, we are in need of immediate evacuation. We have X many souls on board, one of them with serious burns. So after you go through and you get your initial report out about your location, the boat, you're going to go into that CAN report. And that is a great thing to write down with just a big blank space. So it could be that we have run into a shipping container, we're taking on a small amount of water, we are able to contain the leak at this time, we are requesting a tow in because it also broke our rudder shaft. That would be another example of a CAN report. And then you want to finish that off again with the name of your vessel, and you want to let them know if there's any kind of considerations for communication. So, this is sailing vessel Sierra Wind standing by on channel 16. Or it might be something, if I'm single-handing, where you'll say, this is Sierra Wind, we'll have our radio on channel 16, however, I will be outside the vessel, unable to communicate for approximately 10 minutes. We're getting into our life raft, we do not have a handheld radio, we will be unable to communicate, we have, flares on board, we have, you start giving them a little bit more information on what kind of equipment you do have. So, we'll put this up here, again, this is, there's many different Mayday templates out here. This was the one that I made based on my experience and how I wanted my crew to make it. So take that for what you will and move forward in your process. Really quick, we're going to touch on aircraft radios. So if you watched our EPIRB video, you'll know that if you turn this on and EPIRB is going off, you're going to hear on 121.5, you're going to hear a really obnoxious tone. And that is because 121.5 is the equivalent of channel 16 for aircraft. Every plane is supposed to be monitoring 121.5. I'm going to be completely honest, out of every single hour of flight that I've ever done, which is not a lot, I'm a new pilot, I have not once had 121.5 dialed up because I fly in Southern California and our airspace is incredibly busy, so I'm using every radio I have to talk to ATC, to get weather, to listen to an ATIS, whatever it is. I don't have the luxury of a separate radio sitting on 121.5. Where you're going to see this is airliners, which are obviously going to be the vast majority of traffic in the sky. So if you have an airliner overhead, they have got a, besides their sterile cockpit below 10,000 feet, they've got a decent, amount of latitude to listen to radios and play around. So they're going to have a radio on 121.5. And this can punch out to a radio, to an airliner that's at flight level 430, up in the flight levels way up at cruise altitude. So if you have a aircraft radio, you can not only be a nerd like me and talk to your pilot buddy that came down to see you over Mexico, but you can also put this in your ditch bag, and then when you go down, you can periodically make mayday calls on 121.5. If your EPIRB fails, if everything else fails, you might actually be able to communicate to an airliner or somebody that's listening, and they can in turn relay that out to whoever they need to get it to. Obviously, most search and rescue assets are going to have maritime radios if they're playing around in the maritime field. But if for whatever reason that maritime radio fails and you happen to have an aircraft radio, wow, hats off to you. Now you can talk to them on their frequencies, which is kind of fun. So that is your aircraft radio. Moving on to the SSB. This little fella over here sits and collects dust most of the time. We do have it powered up. We do have it wired up and everything. It is a bit of a pain to install because you have to install grounding wires. You have to isolate your backstay or have a dedicated antenna. It's kind of a whole ordeal. But this is what people used to get weather faxes over. You can actually send emails via SSB. So before all the other fancy things that you saw, if you watched our satellite communication video, it was SSB. That was all you had, and you had to be a genuinely skilled radio operator, because the way SSB works is that it basically piggybacks your signal onto. It doesn't piggyback. It basically, you choose the frequency of your signal, and depending on the frequency that you're on, it's going to bounce up and down. Maybe it'll be a 200-mile bounce. Maybe it'll be a 600. So this is one book that we have, Mariner's Guide to SSB. It explains. I'm not going to go into what frequencies to choose if you want to talk all the way around the world versus 200 miles. There's whole maps for it, and it's genuinely an art. You need to use certain times of day for certain distances, and you need to know the composition of the atmosphere. There's a lot of technical info that goes into it, but some things to know is 2182 is the equivalent of the VHF channel 16 on this. So if you don't know what to do, if you have never used an SSB before and you find yourself needing to make a Mayday broadcast, then you've got your emergency channel over here, 2182. So that's kilohertz, by the way. So that's just a raw frequency. They're a lot of fun. If you have the time and the money and you can invest in one, it's a great backup to have. If the satellites go down, this thing will still work. Ham radio people talk to each other all over the world. SSB operators can do the same thing. Last thing we're going to do before we let you guys go is talk about some radio etiquette. Touched on it a little bit. Channel 16 is hailing and international distress only. So say you're offshore and there's a freighter you're going to talk to. You say, hey, this is sailing vessel Sierra Wind. They'll come back to you, or I'll give you a better example. So you'll look off, you'll say, large car carrier in approximate position X, Y, and Z. This is sailing vessel Sierra Wind hailing you on channel 16. And they can hear you. Let's say, this is car carrier, MV whoever. Sierra Wind, what can we do for you? And if they don't give you a working channel, you'll want to pick one. So you'll say, let's go to channel 23. They say, okay, 23. You go over, you dial over, and then you can wait for a sec, see if they're going to talk. If not, you'll say, this is Sierra Wind on channel 23. Then they're going to come back. And you have your conversation, you do whatever, and in the movies you always say over and out. It's not a thing. Even saying people don't really say over. You can do that, but it's gonna sound a little weird. So once you're done with your communication, you're going to tell them what you're going to do communication-wise. It's keeping that constant open loop going. So they're going to say, okay, we're going to pass port to port. Thank you very much. You'll say, Sierra Wind, copy port to port. Sierra Wind will be monitoring channel 16 and 13. And that's it. That's how you end your transmission. Or you say, we'll be standing by on channel 23 for any additional communication. You say whatever you're intending on doing. So make sure that if you guys are talking, and sometimes you do it even on, 22 is kind of the 16 of Mexico. There's so much traffic there. So if it's not going to be a really quick communication with another boat, go ahead and pick a working channel. There's dozens of them. Say, let's go to channel 72. Let's go to 69, whatever it is. And then once you're back there, you'll say Sierra Wind back to 22 and 16. So that is just another kind of radio etiquette, and everyone's listening to this in the States. The Coast Guard very closely monitors it. Doesn't stop people from swearing and acting like adolescents on there, but you want to be professional and you want to keep the radio for important communication and distress functionality. So, thanks for tuning in.